Hello, you're listening to Spiritual Freak Show, and I am Grace Lannon, your host. I'm a psychic medium and an energy healer. We're taking it old school today. I am recording in my car. It's pouring rain outside, and I don't know if you can hear that, but because of the weather conditions here, school was canceled. My sibling teaches high school, and I thought I'd be a nice sibling and I would let them enjoy the living room, which happens to be sharing the same wall as my office. Um, and instead of recording there, I would come old school and sit in my car. And after, I'm going to go on a walk in the pouring rain because I've been going on a walk for almost 900 days in a row, and I can't stop now. But I'm going to record this first before I get soaking wet because I don't want to sit in my wet clothes in the car. So, hi, y'all. I'm very happy to be here. I was kind of reflecting upon the car was enticing to me because I was kind of reflecting upon how I started the podcast, which is I would come on long walk and I would sit in random parking lots and I would record the podcast. And at the time, there wasn't even video, so I don't know if people even knew that. I mean, I probably talked about it on the episodes, but honestly, the sound is probably better because in here because my ceilings are so high in my house. But anyway, so I decided to record today and I was thinking about the beginning of the podcast. So, Spiritual Freak Show is a new iteration of the podcast for anyone who's never listened to the show before or you're a more recent listener. I had a podcast for years called Angel Face Magic Hour, and I started that in November 2020. So I was just thinking about like the time between those things, what has changed, what has not, what have we started sharing, and what do we do now, and what about those beginning episodes do I want to bring back? What do I want to do in terms of guests and different conversations, and how everything's going to be kind of organized? And I feel like I keep coming back and forth to the podcast of putting out these regular episodes where my intention is to really put out these regular episodes and then I don't. And that's something that one is annoying to listeners, I'm sure, because when I have a podcast, I want there to be, I'm like, oh, it's coming out Thursday. It doesn't come out. I'm like annoyed. So one, I want to, show up more for the people that do listen to this podcast on the regular. And also if I'm wanting to build the podcast, I really need to have that consistency. Um, but I'm also thinking about what holds me back from doing that. And I think a lot of that is the recording, and the technical stuff. Like there is little things that just I feel like I get so perfectionistic and then it's not obviously up to the quality standards that I would like it to be, in terms of audio and visual. Like I want better videos. You know, I want to do all that stuff and make it more professional. But it's just me. And I also have I have like three jobs, you guys. I'm busy. Like seeing, psychic clients, mediumship clients, um, doing my facials, doing Reiki, teaching classes, and also um, I think it's just an organization thing about in my mind about it having to be so perfect. So I think coming back into the car and knowing, okay, I can just talk and this always, I think this probably looks better and sounds better than doing it on my computer. But I find for the guest episodes, it's really helpful to be in my office because um it's like more professional or whatever than just sitting in my car. But those are my little rants and my thoughts. And I think how that can apply to everyone else right now is like we're going into the end of the year. So, whatever project that you're working on, whether that's professional or just a hobby, or even just habits and relationships that you have with yourself, like how can we shift? How can we reflect upon the last couple of years and the cycles that we've been in? And how can we set a better standard and also not get stuck in the emotional loops. Like for me, that is perfectionism. When it's not perfect, then I don't do it. Or like I get it almost done and then I like don't finish because I don't feel like it's going to be received enough or good enough or whatever stupid bullshit. So I know everyone has their own emotional trigger basically that holds you back. So maybe that's perfectionism for you, or maybe that's self-doubt, or maybe that is fear. Whatever it is, we want to kind of be able to not let those experiences hold us back from trying again. And that's always something that I want to be an example of it, that it's okay to try again or do something different or also come back to something. And for me, I think the podcast, there's always stories that I want to tell, but I also want to explore other people's stories and display their work, but I'm really trying to figure out like what is exciting to me about that and how do I want to do that going forward. Because even if someone really liked one type of episode the most, I don't know if that should influence me to only do that thing. So I'm not really sure how things will look next year, but I know that I'm really enjoying um, the stories that we're telling right now. And so today we're going to talk about mediumship, but I I really just want everyone to reflect upon that for themselves. Like if you could redesign or revamp or revision one aspect of your life right now, and for me, I'm talking about like talking on the podcast about my podcast, meta. Um, but if you could revamp or redesign one aspect of your life right now, whether that's work, career, friendships, relationships to self, maybe that's like more physical stuff, like going on your walks or doing your exercises or doing your breath work or your meditation, like or your connection to God or your whatever it is for you that you really want to reinvigorate your relationship with. And maybe that is your actual relationship. Did I already say relationship? Relationship. How can you focus on that right now until the end of the year? Like imagining what you want it to be. And there isn't a time frame for you to do this. Like you don't have to wait till January to make changes or start again. But I think this end of the year time that we're in, end of November, we're gonna have Thanksgiving next week, and then which is right when I started the podcast, was right around Thanksgiving. And then we'll have, all the holidays going into there. So this is really it is a time of celebration. I'm not a big fan of Thanksgiving and the history to it. We've probably talked about this every year, but there are real demons and dark things about that we as Americans should recognize and face in terms of, genocide as the American Indians, the Native Americans. So, like, all that aside, holidays, Christmas, Hanukkah, etc., it's a lot about celebration. So I think there's also time and space for us to really celebrate ourselves and what we have accomplished this year and in the past few years. but I also want us to see where we can re-envision and go deeper and expand more and more in whatever aspect of our life that we're seeking change in. So I feel like some of that was coming in through the channeling. And when that happens, I often find that I talk very slow. So put me on 2x speed if that bothers you. Because me as Grace, I'm like trying to talk, and then there's also like the spirit coming through, and then I get into this almost trance-like state. Also, someone pulled up in front of me and then just drove away. Sounds a little distracting. So that's the one thing about recording, is like I have to be aware of my surroundings. But here we are in the car. Let's talk about mediumship. So who wants so we are glitching. We are glitching. We are glitching. We are glitching. E e e e e. So you want to be a medium part 2. We're going to talk about clairsentience today, which is psychic feeling. And as we talked about in the So You Want to Be a Medium Part 1 episode, if you haven't listened to it, you can go back a few episodes and check it out. Psychic senses and intuition, opening up these abilities is like a precursor to mediumship. And I think it is very helpful to have those skills and those understandings, even if it's just very briefly, before you go into mediumship, because I think it can help you decipher the information that is coming forward. And I think a lot of times people don't think that something is a spiritual experience or a mediumship experience if it isn't clairvoyance, which is psychic seeing, which is seeing apparition or a spirit or a ghost. Like, people might not acknowledge the other intuitive or mediumship or psychic or spiritual experiences that they have, because they are outside of their framework of understanding what that actually is. And so when we talk about the senses, we call them clairs, and that comes from French, but basically it is clairsentience, psychic feeling, clairvoyance, psychic seeing, visions, etc., things like that. Claircognizance, psychic knowing, clairaugusence, psychic tasting. What else is there? Clairaudience, psychic hearing, and then there's the smelling ones, clairolfactory. I don't know if there's a different word for that, but you can receive information through all those different points of activation within our body. So it's the same as our physical senses. It's just outside. We are sensing something that is outside of physicality with these senses. So what I mean by that is, if there is a spirit present with you, spirit, crossover, loved one, dead person, ghost, that kind of thing, of being, an energy, an entity, a spirit present with you, that is outside of our physical reality, but it still contains a form. It still contains a body. It's just not the same as our human form, our embodied form, in the sense of blood, bones, skeleton, the whole thing, the organs and all that. They don't have that, but they still have a form that we can recognize. Some beings don't have forms, but let's not get into all that right now because that will confuse you. But we are sensing something outside of our physical reality. And when we do that, we can also sense many things outside of our physical reality. One thing that is almost like a vibration or a language of our intuition is emotions. So emotions are ways that energy can be communicated to us. So the biggest thing that we work on trying to understand, because it's not conquering, it's not finishing, we're never going to be done with this thing, we're never going to fully understand it. But what we want to begin to understand is the difference between our personal emotions and the emotions outside of ourselves, which could be anything. That could be an emotion from a spirit or an energy, or that could be emotion from your friend who's sitting next to you, your friend who's in Florida right now, and you're just really connected to her, so you're feeling something right now. It really depends on your sensitivity and what you're picking up on. So when we work on these skills, it's really about like closing off our access to everything, excuse me, and pinpointing our access to the one thing that we're looking at. So I think when we open up to our intuitive energies, it's like looking into like a kaleidoscope almost. So you're turning it, but then there's all these different forms that you're seeing, but then not only are you seeing it through the form of the pieces in front of your eyes, you're also seeing how that reflects out and creates the shapes and the forms outside of the kaleidoscope. So you really are looking at a lot of things at once. So I think if we can shut down the everything and focus on what we're trying to attract or we're trying to understand or we're trying to look at, that is really helpful. So in mediumship, we don't necessarily use a tool, but I think having these divination tools like oracle cards and tarot cards and pendulums and things like that are very helpful for opening up the psychic and the intuitive skills, is because you have something to channel that information through and something to pinpoint and focus on. You can do this with many things and many different tools, and anything technically could be a divination tool. But one thing that in mediumship people they do is psychometry. So that is more using an object to pick up information. So I see this really as a combination of psychic and mediumship work, because you might be picking up information about the object, but it might not necessarily be coming from a spirit. It might just be like residual leftover energy. So in some ways, I find it important to separate psychic and mediumship. And in other ways, I think they are always going to be together. And I think with traditional mediumship, a lot of stuff that people say is that it's not psychic, it's not psychic, it's not psychic, it's mediumship. And I think they go together a lot of the time. And it takes a while, and it takes a lot of ego dissolution, releasing your ego, releasing your personality, your personality. They say that a million times, but it's a releasing like who you are and allowing that spirit to move forward so that you can really like channel the information that's coming forward and talk about it. Because with psychic stuff, it is often coming through your personality in order for you to understand it. So with clairsentience is what we're going to talk about primarily today, and I'm going to go over each sense, and then we'll go from there in this mediumship series. And if you guys want to learn more, you can always book a reading with me. If you want to get a so much energy is moving through me, excuse me. I'm recycling, reducing, and reusing. You guys, I got a Taco Bell slushie the other day, and then now there's coffee in there. You can't see. Why did I do that? Just to show you guys, I literally spilled. Okay, Anyway, Clairsentience. Talk about it. Let's talk about it. Why would I do that? But yeah, you can always book a reading with me, and but I also do intuitive mentorship, which is more so if you guys want to build your own psychic and mediumship ship skills practice or continue to do that, you can always reach out to me and we can set up a one-on-one session. But how I really like to do that is I work with people in like 3 to 6 month packages. And along with the podcast revamp, I'm also revamping my website. A lot is changing in my business, you guys, and I'm getting some opportunities to also be doing more in-person events. So if you're in Sonoma County, please join my mailing list, because I'm hoping that I'm going to be doing some mediumship classes in person. I just met with this girl yesterday, so I'm giving her a reading, brush her fingers, see how it works out. If she likes it, we'll go from there. Um, but anyway, if you want to go deeper with this. I also teach this class called Mediumship Magic, which has been online, but I'm really hoping if it's not this place, it's going to be another place. But I'm hoping to find a place where I can teach a mediumship circle in person. And if you are a listener anywhere else in the world and you want to do something like this, please DM me, email me. I'm always willing to set up a class if people are interested in doing doing this work. If people are interested in doing this work, maybe you and 3 of your friends want to do a class and we could just set it up. We could just make it happen. Or I can always, promote a class and see if we can get other people to sign up because with mediumship, we can do it, me and you, one-on-one, and that's very deep, but we get into a lot of other stuff too, which is more personal healing, and we do all energy healing. And if you want to know about the coaching, reach out. Now that's my side note and promotional um, banter before we get into the Clairsentience talk. And also, if you guys are listening to this, today is November 22nd, and I am going to be doing a Black Friday slash holiday sale. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, I don't think this is going to be on the packages, but for sessions, I'm going to be doing a sale on Reiki sessions and Akasha Records reading and mediumship. So, Clairsentience is your body communicates messages to you. And for me, a lot of that comes in my throat and it kind of hurts. If I'm not fully stepping into the message, I start to feel like I have to cough or I'm being um squeezed, heightened at the throat. And usually if I open up my heart and I open up to spirit, whoever's trying to come in, then that releases, that energy releases. And so clairsentience, I mean psychic feeling. So that can happen 2 ways. One is the emotions that we are just talking about, how um our intuition is kind of like displayed to us through our emotions and how we can pick up and interpret those emotions. And that can be both the emotions we receive that are our own, like I'm feeling sad right now, I'm feeling nostalgic, oh this thing just reminds me of that, and or I'm feeling joy or whatever it is, or picking up the emotions of other people. And that can be a spirit in mediumship, like for example, if a spirit came forward, say it was someone's aunt, she was a silly laughing, like funny kind of woman. If you start to feel those emotions bubble up, like that, that is usually an indicator that you're kind of picking on those emotions of the spirit. A lot of times when spirits come through in mediumship, sometimes this is more of a cathartic experience for the client. So a lot of times you might pick up on their emotions, the client that's sitting there, and you might feel grief or sadness or whatever emotion that they're experiencing, you might be picking up on that. So I think it's also learning to separate yourself from the client to be able to observe the information, and then process it through. This is complicated. So it's hard to fully explain without giving you 700 examples. But when we do a psychic reading, we're kind of like almost intertwining our aura with the aura of the person we're reading so that we can fully pick up on the information. And this doesn't always need to be done depending on how you perceive information. But if we're working with clairsentience, we're really almost using our body as a channel, as a beacon to interpret information. And that comes through both our physical feelings and our emotional feelings. So the sadness, the joy, I'm feeling tears, I'm just feeling shivers, tingles, I'm feeling heat, I'm starting to sweat, I feel nausea. I feel like for me that throat closing up, where I've done readings for people where maybe they had some really intense foot issue and all of a sudden my feet hurt. Like it really can come through very physically, and this can be somewhat alarming if you don't understand what's happening. And this is often, I think, a big cause of anxiety for intuitives, um, is this hit almost of psychic information can be very disorienting and very uncomfortable. And that I think is where it's very helpful to build the other skills as well. So you don't have to feel so deeply. But how it works for me, at least, because everyone's different. Remember, this is from my experience and how it works for me. If I perceive something and I feel it and then I acknowledge it, then it goes away. But if I just like ignore it, that's usually when I am plagued almost with that pain or that discomfort for much longer than it needs to be. And for me, I think personally, I've had a lot of health issues and different things. And I think it was very confusing for me to understand how my mediumship and my psychic skills worked, because I also had these symptoms and these issues from health issues. But then there's this little intertwine of um buck buckery, which is was I truly experiencing those symptoms, or was I picking up on energy, or was that how my body was processing the emotions that I wasn't able to process? So there's a lot to understand in that. But with clairsentience, we're picking up on psychic feelings. So that can happen again through the emotions, but that can also happen through our body. So with mediumship, a lot of people say, and it's been the experience of mine, that sometimes we can experience or feel that person's death. And really, that is almost just like a clue for us to understand the information that we're receiving. So, you know, there's a lot of important things about people's lives that should be acknowledged and that the spirit will bring forward. But oftentimes it's the death that helps people understand that that's the person who's coming through. They're like, heart attack. Oh, that was my grandpa. Oh, suicide. Oh, that was my mom's friend. Like, da da da. Like, whatever the way that the death happened, I feel like helps people realize who's talking. Whereas sometimes some of the other information about people's personalities, things they did in their life, it was their occupation, maybe it was a little secret inside joke between the person and the sitter, the person we're getting the reading. That stuff takes a while for them to click. Oh, yeah, it was Joe. It was my mom's friend. Oh, it was Jill. Like, it takes a while to sometimes get the message that you're receiving, whether that's in a reading or you're just picking up the information for yourself. in your daily life and you are having these spiritual experiences and you're trying to figure out where it's coming from. But I often feel at the same time when we're getting a spiritual message from a spirit in terms of someone that you know that died, not an angel, not a guide, not a alien, like a human being, I often find we know, oh, that's my grandpa. It's the fucking cardinal, the red cardinal. Why is that your grandpa? You just know. And that's the feeling. That's the feeling. It's that feeling. Someone walks into the room, your best friend walks into the room, you're across the room, you don't see her at all, but you know, oh, my bestie's here. You feel her. You know what her energy feels like. You know what your grandma feels like when you're a little kid, like, and maybe your aunt's coming over and your uncle's coming over. You don't know who's coming, but you know they're both coming, and you know, oh, my aunt's here. It must be her. And you see her walk through the door. You know right away from the feeling. And you know, there's context clues, and a lot of us are very observant, but it also can be hyper vigilant depending on your personal situation and your childhood and everything like that. But we, you know, we might know, oh, I know the sound and the sound of my uncle's car or the sound of my aunt's car, you know, all those little clues. But it's really the feeling that we're picking up on. You just know something and you just know it. And we'll go deeper into the knowing when we talk about claircognizance and psychic knowing. But feeling is so expansive because it's both the emotions, both the physical and the energy. So there's so many layers to it that we are picking up on when we open up ourselves to examining this aspect of our intuition, which is clairsentience. So I think what is very exciting about something like this is it is very hard to deny a physical sensation or experience. So, in terms of spirit and mediumship and ghost energies, there's also the aspect of being touched by a spirit. You might feel the presence um, of that spirit. Yes, like we talked about, you might get goosebumps or tingles in your body or warm, but it's also that sensation of like when someone's standing right next to you, someone's putting their hand on your shoulder, someone's rubbing your back. And then the opposite, we can have like creepy, weird experiences where you feel like, oh, someone's sitting right next to me or whatever. But it is absolutely really hard to deny to yourself when you have those physical experiences. But because there isn't a visual to it, it's also easy to get caught up in your mind that that's impossible. So I think one way that if you're wanting to deepen the skill, that is helpful to begin to examine your emotions and your physical sensations in your body so you can start to really acknowledge and understand when they're happening and when they're occurring. So one thing I find helpful for that is doing like a body scan meditation or some kind of yoga nidra meditation. And I'm pretty sure I have a body scan on my YouTube. I'll link it if you guys want to check it out. And I don't think I have a yoga nidra on my YouTube, but I have one that I really like that I listen to by Ali Michelle, who is a yoga teacher. So I'll also link those. And those, it's not necessarily directly mediumship development, but when we do things like that, we're really taking time to process and understand what we're feeling and what we're experiencing. And then we're also imagining scenarios and creating those sensations within our body so that we can begin to use our feeling sense, our emotions, and our body as, again, a beacon or a channel of information so that we can read psychically or we can read mediumship. So for me, when I do a psychic reading, it's like I'm taking that information into me, or I'm reading it outside of me in the Akashic records, or if I'm doing a mediumship, it's more like the person is conveying information to me, or the spirit comes through me and I channel that information forward. So that's kind of different ways that energy can come forward. And I find that when people develop these skills, there are many different ways that it comes through. And I don't think we necessarily need to force one way, but I also think sometimes it's good to try to do something different than what naturally comes forward, because it helps us understand those other gifts deeper. So when I say that, I mean, we are wanting to open up all the clear senses eventually, but we're going to talk about the feeling sense first, and then we'll go eventually into the visual, because that's kind of the hardest one. That might be the easiest one if that's what comes naturally to you, but that's also one where we are faced with a lot of fear. And I think each sense has almost their own demon. And when I say demon, I don't mean like a literal entity, but I mean something, this form that like holds us back from accessing it. And I think that is an emotion. And so for clairsentience, I really think that it is doubt that comes forward, that helps, that deters us, not helps us, does not help us, that deters us from fully accessing those skills, because we doubt what we're feeling, we doubt what we are experiencing. So, just some thoughts about clairsentience. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. If you're interested in connecting more, you know how to find me. And then I am doing a workshop in person. If you see this one, this comes out, it's on Sunday with Melody that I've been doing the tarot podcast with. She also teaches yoga, and this is a 2-hour workshop we're doing in Sebastopol at Radiate, which is a yoga studio downtown Sebastopol. Well, I guess it's not technically downtown, but it is right in the middle of Sebastopol, and it is a hour of yin restorative yoga taught by Melody, and then I'm doing a Reiki infused sound bath. So this is 2 hours in Sebastopol, California. I'll put a link if you want to sign up. It's this Sunday, November 24th. And we also recorded another episode for the Tarot podcast, so that will be coming out in a few days. And if you missed the last one, we go into breaking down the Fool card. I'll be back with some more mediumship episodes. And then, like I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, I'm really revamping and revitalizing, thinking about how I want to share weekly next year. And that is going to be very much mediumship and tarot focused, as well as guest episodes. But we'll see how everything turns out. I have lots to say, and I also have breath work classes that I've been working on and many exciting projects. So lots to look forward to in terms of energy healing work and spiritual work. And I hope that Spiritual Freak Show is helping you in whatever way you are wanting to deepen your connection with God, with spirit, with source, with the universe, with your guides, with the other side. And welcome to the Age of Aquarius, bitch. I'll see you next week. Bye.